Hello and welcome to the Safe Space ASMR podcast, where we talk about all things spirituality, personal development, and so much more. Here we align the mind, body, and spirit to live our most authentic lives. Sometimes we whisper, sometimes we soft speak, but every time we expand, grow, and relax. So sit back, grab a drink. I have a liquid death right here, not anything special. I know I do want to have like cold drinks in every episode, but today I have water because I am dehydrated and very thirsty. So I'm gonna take a sip, pause this audio or video if you're watching on YouTube, or audio if you're watching on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure you subscribe, like, and grab your drink. So so good. I need that. In today's episode 7, we're going to be talking about conscious communication in relationships. This is so important, so important. I made an episode a couple episodes back, I'm forgetting numbers, on how to attract your soulmate. Now we're going to be talking about how to maintain the soulmate. You know, no relationship is perfect. There's always a little bit of things, everyone has different standards in this idea of perfection, but every relationship, I kind of feel like it's inevitable for an argument to come up here or there. It doesn't have to be often. Like me and my boyfriend, we barely ever argue. We have never fought. I think there's a difference between fighting and arguing, but we barely ever argue. And if we do argue, it's over stupid things, but it never gets out of hand. We have these rules where, we'll never like yell or raise our voice and say swear words. It's always a respectable communication where it gets a little tense, argues, but it's always resolved. We also have a rule to never go to sleep unless we resolve an argument. The arguments are so stupid, but anyway, I think most are, honestly, but it all comes down to deep inner wounds that it may seem stupid, but it all stems back to something deeper. And today we're going to be talking about why couples argue, and how to stop arguing or stop fighting, especially fighting. So the number one reason why people argue is because one person thinks they're right, one person thinks, both people think they're right. Both parties think they're right, as if there's one right and one wrong, which is the ego's perception of superiority. One person thinks I'm right, and this is the only truth, and you're wrong, and therefore you're to blame, you're at fault. And we kind of get in this, especially fighting, it turns into this morality thing of who is superior and who is not. And the ego likes to be right all the time. And this is why fights happen, because we're afraid to be, our pride to be broken, or embarrassed to be wrong. So we fight for our lives to be right. But I just want to say, what is it worth? Is it worth ruining a relationship to be right? For your pride to have that instant gratification of being right? Is a whole relationship worth it? But that's beside the track, because I'll talk about that later. But it's an assumption of what they should do and say based on your inner rule book. So what I mean by this is we all carry with us a rule book, and I learned this from Tony Robbins. We have these inner rules of what do we expect our partner. I'm going to be talking about relationships specifically. It's the month of February. Valentine's happened recently, but relationships specifically. We think our partner should do something, or we maybe expect them to do something, and we're constantly putting out these little tests to see if they do the thing that you think they should do, or that you expect them to do. So we have this inner dialogue telling us that they should be doing this, and we wait to see if they do it. I know a lot of arguments happen because, we think that they should have said something, or they should have acted this way, but they're only acting based on their perception of what they think is right or wrong, what they think they should be doing. Me and Jordan, we have this agreement to always know that each one of us has good intentions. Like, we don't have malicious intentions, because that needs some inner work. Like, if you have malicious intentions towards your partner, that, like, is it a soulmate relationship? As well as there needs to be self-healing done in order to show up as a conscious person, to have conscious communication. Now, no one's perfect. It's okay to have flaws. It's okay to not be fully healed. Like, you don't have to be fully healed to be in a relationship. I'll talk about relationships in the future as well, but I wasn't fully healed at all. I was insecure. I had a lot of thoughts come up of like insecurity and like fears. And because we're long distance, and in the beginning, it created so much anxiety thinking like, will we fade? Like, long distance, like, all this stress that society says the long distance doesn't work. And I'll talk about that in a moment as well. But no one's perfect, and I'm not saying that you should be. But if you have like true malicious, manipulative intentions towards your partner, it's like, I don't think that there should be a relationship until you can fully. But I also don't think that's true love. Like, with true love, I don't think you would have malicious intentions or manipulative intentions with true love. And if you're with the right person, there could be that you're not with the right person, and either they have that or you have that, then it's not the right person. But if you do really love this person and you truly love them, and let's say you find yourself arguing and you want to save the relationship, I'm here to help you. Because I don't think, I think things can also be turned around. Let's say a relationship starts being unhealthy. I think it can be turned around. I believe in saving relationships. I believe I'm a second chance type person. Not when you're fully getting disrespected, but I do believe in the best of people, and I do believe in evolution and evolving together. Like, me and Jordan, from the beginning, we never really argued, but like, I would have overthinking of insecurity, because at first I feel a little bit as if I put him on a pedestal and everything, because to me he's so perfect, and like, I have insecure thoughts about myself. And so I thought like, oh, like, do you actually want me? Like, am I actually good enough for, like, I had these insecure thoughts come up, and it would close me off. I would close off in fear. And we'll talk about closing off. We'll talk about it, don't worry. But let's go back to the inner rule book. We have an inner rule book of what the person that you're talking to or dating should be doing or saying. And we have these expectations that we put on them, which is not fair, because we're projecting what we believe is right when they have good intentions, but maybe they're just not thinking your way, based on your inner rule book, based on your love language, which also needs to be communicated. But let's say you're talking to someone. Let's give an example. You're talking to someone and your love language is words of affirmation. But let's say that his or her love language is quality time. Okay? And yours is words of affirmation. So when you're not together, you need to see texts of reassurance or texts of, you look beautiful today, XYZ. And you expect them to do that, and you project it onto them without telling them what you like. And let's say they don't do it, and therefore you get upset and you start an argument because they're not acting in accordance to what you think they should be acting like. So you're projecting this idea onto them, which is very unfair, because let's say their love language is quality time, and they're kind of, we can kind of a little bit be unconscious, a little bit based on what our love language is, and like sometimes maybe forget about their love language. But it's all about making an effort and communicating this to, prevent fights from happening down the line. Me and Jordan had to have this conversation plenty of times, like a reminder, like, hey, like, I'm feeling a little down. My love language is words of affirmation, and I would really like some reassurance right now. That has probably come out of my mouth plenty of times. And he reassures me in that moment. He's not mad at me for saying that. He's not mad at me voicing my needs, and he respects it. I could have acted out in a way of being silent and then resenting and then being mad and then saying, you don't ever say you don't ever say look, like I could have acted out in that way. And that's what a lot of people tend to do, because we have this rule book of how they should be acting. And then we start a fight rather than going back to the moment of thinking, okay, let me just communicate, this is what I need right now. Communicating your needs doesn't mean they don't love you or that they don't respect you or, love you the way that you love them. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that maybe they just weren't thinking it at the time. And if you base your inner knowing that they have good intentions, then it would save a lot of overthinking as well. Okay, so going back to the story, their love language is quality time. So they think that just spending quality time is enough. And if you don't communicate, the love language and what you need in certain moments, and communicate how you feel and what comes up, then fights will eventually fall out, because you put expectations and projections onto them, because you think if they're not doing this, then they don't love me. If they're not doing XYZ, then this means this. So we also create so many false assumptions when we all have different experiences, different ways of giving and receiving love, and different ideas of what love is, and different ideas of, how we need to be in certain moments. And a lot of the times, the partner just doesn't know. He or she just doesn't know. And we just have to communicate certain things rather than perceiving in your illusion of your mind of, this means this. So we perceive based off what you would do. Let's say you would say, or let's give another, it's easy to just give examples. Let's say you would reassure them. I'm going to give such a basic example, okay? I don't even know where this came from, but let's say your boy or whatever, your girl just lost a game. I don't know. Just lost a game and they're upset, and you start massaging their back, okay? And then they get mad because they think, oh, you're just massaging my back. Why wouldn't you give me the words or reassurance? And you get mad at them for not giving you what they needed. But they weren't aware of exactly what you needed in that moment. And so instead of projecting anger based on what you would do if the situation were reversed, instead of projecting anger, instead of saying what you need, we project anger and we start a fight based off of this idea of what you would do. But you both, in a relationship, you don't have the same minds. You don't have, no one's perfect in giving what someone needs in the right way, in the way that, aligns with every single thought that you're having of what you want. And I know sometimes it's tough, but that's the truth. No one can give you exactly or know exactly what you want and need in that moment. And it's okay to have to voice that sometimes. And we can voice things that hurt us or that we feel some type of way about. We can voice them in a very calm, conscious manner rather than a reactive mode. We just have to give ourselves that space of, instead of reacting, we respond to the situation, because both parties are valid. I know this is kind of everywhere a little bit, but no one is right or wrong. Me and Jordan also say that no one is to blame. I kind of put myself at fault sometimes, oh, it's my fault, I got upset, whatever. And he was there's no faults, it's okay. And he always reassures me that there is no fault, because I think once we also start putting faults, this fight was your fault, this argument was your fault, or even blaming ourselves, it builds up. So every argument, it's keeping tally and score of whose fault was what. No, there's no fault. It just is what it is. And there's no right or wrong either. You both are coming at something from a different perception and a different perspective, but there's no right or wrong in each thing. When we put right or wrong, when we put, angry projections, when we don't voice our needs, it builds into resentment, it builds into fights, and it builds up. Especially when we don't voice our needs, we repress it, which, let's talk about where the inner rulebook comes from, and then we'll talk about repression. So our inner rulebook is created from the past program, past relationships, your perception of your parents, relationships that you've seen, relationships that you've been in, people, not even relationships, but people that you've talked to. We began to create certain beliefs about what we are deserving of, what's good, what's bad, what XYZ equals what. We put like associations based on certain things based on past experiences. So let's say you have had a bad relationship in the past where someone has cheated, okay? That's a bad relationship, it's a bad circumstance. And therefore, in this present relationship that you're in, you might have a lot of fears, a lack of trust, and let's say they're out or they haven't texted you back, and you make this assumption that, oh, they're cheating, oh, they don't like me anymore, oh, they're starting to fade from me, and you make that assumption. And it's okay to think that and feel that, and I don't want to invalidate that, and your partner shouldn't invalidate it as well, which we'll talk about it. I feel like I keep saying like, because I'm like, I don't want to lose my structure a little bit, because I can go off on tangents, but it's very valid that you think that because of your past program, in the relationships that you've been in the relationships that you've seen, and what you've experienced. So moving into this new relationship, you might have these thoughts and these fears and these, programs in your mind, and that also should be communicated, because if it's not, you might start projecting fears onto them. You might start projecting, anger, or projecting assumptions onto them, when it should be talked about in the beginning. Me and Jordan, we talked about our past relationships in the beginning, and the fears that we have had, or that we have, and the fears that have been created from the past. And so if you talk about it and you get to understand each other and understand why you may feel insecure, why you have these trust issues, and explain your past, that should be respected, and that shouldn't be viewed as you either. So with that being said, me and Jordan, we made it in a role. Sorry, I keep using me and Jordan. We've been together for 3 years and a few months. Of course, I'm going to use him as an example because I'm in a relationship and this is the stuff that I've learned. But in the beginning, we made it a rule to not view each other as our thoughts, to not view each other as our fears. Because if he were to view me as my fears or my thoughts, he might get offended. He might get, reactive or defensive, me being insecure that he's going to meet other people because he's like too good, in the beginning relationship, the thoughts that I've had, that he's gonna like move on from me. He could get offended or defensive at that. Like, why would you think that of me? He could view those thoughts as me, but we made it a rule. Like, that's not me. That's my thoughts, but my thoughts are not me. I'm much more than my thoughts, but I'm communicating my thoughts, and here they are. And this is why I feel this way. This is why I have these beliefs. And talk about the past, but the past is not you. The thoughts are not you. You can go watch my episode 2 where I talk a lot about this, that your thoughts are not you. You and your partner might need to watch it, because that should be a common ground, a common understanding, so that you don't get defensive at the thoughts, because that can also create fights. Like, why would you think that of me? You're just going to assume that I'm this bad person. Because let's say the partner goes out and you start having fears come up because they haven't texted you for hours, and you start like really getting worried. We do have to have some self-control. It takes a lot of going in within rather than just expecting your partner to heal it. It does take some level of responsibility to like really sit down with yourself, but it's okay if you feel a little crazy and you text them a couple times. They should respect that. Okay, I understand that you've had this past experience. It's okay. Like, I love you, and they should reassure you in that moment. Maybe they can't reassure, maybe they're busy, like at work, or, don't make assumptions based off of not texting back for a couple hours. Like, you never really know, but you might have a fear of that because in the past, let's say something happened when your partner didn't text you back. So that needs to be voiced. It needs to be voiced, but not only that, it doesn't a relationship and conscious communication goes both ways. So you might want to get your partner and watch this together. But it goes both ways. It doesn't just go with the communication and the expression. It goes with the respect. And that goes for you respecting them as well when they have these thoughts come up. Conscious communication takes a level of self-control. Okay, because I think it's much easier to just react and to get angry, or you should be doing this, or to not even say anything and test them a little bit. Like, it could be really easy to get in this reactive state and project what we think is right onto them. But it takes self-control to also diffuse the argument early on. When we start feeling ourselves get in that bad mood, we start thinking these thoughts, it is not good. It's not a good idea to repress them and become silent, because that is going to build tension, and it's not going to be good. In the moment of the feeling of frustration, voice it, communicate it. Say, I'm feeling frustrated right now because I think this, and I know like it's not anyone's fault, and I'm just feeling this way, and voice it. Diffuse the situation before your ego's pride gets in the way. Do it quick. That's like my one thing, like diffuse the situation quickly from not projecting pain, rather expressing from an observation, because there is a moment before where you are the observer and you're conscious and you're calm. But then when you get that silent and you start thinking and thinking and thinking, and then you start bringing up the past and thinking the past and all these things, that can turn into a reaction, a projection of pain. And we want to first release when we first feel, rather than create an impression on your heart and repress it. When we hold in energy, when we hold in that anger, we create this block within ourselves. A throat chakra block where now we can't talk because our pride is in the way, or, we get this sick feeling in our stomach, or our heart hurts, and we start overthinking and building on the energy, and we create these negative impressions, these negative blocks, and we repress it. But we need to ask ourselves in these moments, what will this cost me emotionally? Repressing the thoughts and letting it build, and then allowing this to turn into a fight. And you can never know this. You can never take back your words. You can never take them back. Your words hold power. Your words hold weight. So instead of reacting and saying things that you won't regret later, instead of reacting from your ego, even if you say things and they're not fully true, but you just like really projected anger in that moment from the past, you still cannot take back your words. What will this cost you emotionally when you begin to feel the frustration? Like, you don't want to fight. Our body, I think, is addicted to to drama, because we get bored and we cause these fights. But do you really want it? Or would you rather just be happy and be present and be joyful? But I'm not saying that you have to always be that, because it's not going to be a real thing. But instead of allowing the argument to turn into a fight, to turn into so much, fire and fire, fighting fire with fire, instead of allowing it to turn into that, you need to ask yourself, in the very small moments where you start to feel it, will repressing this, what will it cost me emotionally? Instead, I'm just going to express my thoughts. I think it's very important to express. It's okay if you express, and it's okay if it turns into a little argument. In those moments, you grow closer, you grow stronger, and you will understand each other more from expression. But, repressing it, giving it time, and allowing it to turn into a fight and an argument, or repressing it in your mind and never bringing it up, and then later down the line you bring it up because you get in a big fight, and then all this stuff that you repressed comes up. Instead of that, communicate the initial feelings, communicate the initial noticing of the changing of your mood, and understand that I'm not these thoughts, I'm not this mood either. And when you become the observer of it, arguments rarely happen, because you are conscious of you not being your thoughts. You're conscious of where these thoughts are coming from, and when the mood is there. Meditation has helped me a lot with this, so I do recommend meditating. I can make an episode if you'd like. Let me know. Give me episode ideas, by the way. This is not just my podcast, this is our podcast. But when you meditate, you begin to realize the moods. Like, it's weird. The one thing that I've really have grown to be able to do is not get in bad moods, because I notice the mood. Actually, I notice it in my chest, and I like see it, and I'm like, huh, interesting. And I don't let it, pass. I don't like get victim to it. I don't get sucked into it. We have a choice in these moments, but we really don't believe we have a choice, because we're always so reactive and always doing these instant things. But we really ultimately have a choice all the time. We can either choose to react or choose to respond. Now, don't cause drama. I have this written down. Don't cause drama in bringing it up to others. When you get really frustrated, I know a lot of the times people tend to bring their relationship drama onto friends, and that can be okay in some circumstances. Some. Maybe you need guidance, or you need just a little bit of advice with something that's going on, and that's like okay. But if you're going to your friends and saying F him, F her, like I really effing hate, like, don't disrespect your partner by bringing it up to other people. You shouldn't even have to bring it up to other people. You should be able to, in that moment when you feel it, talk to them. It's okay to have, go to counseling, or, if you need to talk to friends in a conscious way. But don't disrespect your partner. This could be, I always say, take everything I say with gray matter, not black and white. Don't take it as black and white. There's situations, there's a bunch of different things. In an abusive relationship, of course, bring it up to others. You need others. And a lot of the times, for a lot of situations, we do need others. So don't take what I say black and white. I'm talking about like in a little conscious, you get in a little tiny argument over something stupid. You shouldn't go to your friends and family and say, F it. You should be able to talk to your partner. This hurt me because I didn't like the way that and not get defensive either. That your partner shouldn't. You should be able to talk it out and solve it and hug. Sometimes our ego and our pride might not be able to talk, but our bodies should be able to hug. I heard that, marriages, they divorce when they start sleeping in separate rooms. When the husband or wife goes to the couch and they start sleeping not together. There's something about being in an argument, but you're still in each other's space. You're still close. That, even if you have to sit in the argument and not talk for a while, I think it's really good to solve it. Everyone handles things differently. Sometimes someone might need space, but I ultimately think even after that space, you should be able to talk it out and solve it. That's my belief. You don't have to take on that belief, but I do believe it's really important to solve and close the matter and to never bring it up again. That's like a quote that I wrote that I've heard before is, true credibility lies on what is right in front of you. If you're bringing up past things in a current situation, it's not credible, because you're bringing up something that should have already been resolved. And your ego is trying to take things from the past. When the past is gone, it shouldn't be lingering. And this is what repression does. We bring it up later on when we get in that fight. And it's not credible. We should be able to consciously solve the matter in the moment that it happens, / the next day, whatever, if you need space, but be able to solve it in order for it to not be brought up again. And repression from past releases later. It always releases later, because it also builds resentment. If you're constantly repressing things that your partner does that you don't like, and you repression builds an explosion. And this brings me into number 3. I've said so many things, but somehow we're on number 3. The urge to add on. The urge to add on is when your partner does something you don't like, you close off, repress it, and then you build this resistance and you don't release it. And like I said, it comes up in the next argument or the next fight. And when you do that, the resentment builds into smaller arguments, more frequent. But when you both understand you're not your thoughts, you're not your past, we each have different perceptions. There's no right or wrong, and there's no one to blame either. We're just human beings expressing our little thoughts and detach from it. you then begin to realize that you can have conscious communication and grow in the area of communication, grow in the area of conscious relationships and conscious communication in relationships. And, sometimes the ego builds into pride, and then it builds into, oh, I'm superior, this is right, this is wrong, and then it builds into silence. That is never good, because it's not going anywhere. We think that it goes somewhere when we don't mention it, but it's not. It's staying within us. And then we create those impressions, like I said, within our heart, and it creates blocks. And blocked energy is never good energy. And when we release and respect, release respect, your partner and you, be able to release your thoughts, and before it turns into this fire within you, diffuse it by saying, I'm feeling this way, it's okay, but I just want to express this. And your partner should really respect you. Not everyone's perfect. We have to give each other some space to be able to respond sometimes, because if we do something right away, sometimes it might be a reaction. But really think on it. Think on, what will this cost me emotionally? You cannot take back your words. Be conscious. Be conscious. And never attack. I have this written down. Do not attack the person, just attack the situation. Don't disrespect your partner by bringing their character down. Talk about the situation. Learn from it. Try to understand their perspective in it. Like, where were they coming from? What is their idea of right and wrong in the situation? And get to know their perspective rather than attacking them as a character. So, also don't hurt someone just so you feel valid. That is emotional manipulation. And that's like with attacking a person. Don't attack a person to make yourself feel bigger, because when you do that, that's where it really hurts. You cannot take back your words in that moment. And just be really conscious of that. What you say. What is it going to cost me emotionally? Is it worth it? Is it worth swearing? Is it worth reacting? And everything I said, just really giving yourself that space to understand and to know that no one's right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. And I know a lot of the times we might have these tendencies to project what we think is right, or project an assumption of them based off of what we would have done or we would think. But we have to communicate that, because they're not masterminds. They don't know. They don't know everything. They don't know perfection. And we have to understand that we have to give them space to also be a human. And we have different love languages. Communicate that as well. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it was a lot. I will be talking about relationships more. I love the topic of relationships. I used to study relationships, study dating, and I study people. It's very fun to me. But I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you did. Don't forget to follow, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. I love you so much, and thank you for listening. I hope to see you again soon.